The Solution. Translation by Ruth Clark. So, Armando, tell us, what are you writing now? There it was, the dreaded question. They had finished their dinner and were sitting in the living room of Armando's cliff-top villa, drinking coffee. The half-open window looked out over the street lamps lining the seafront and the winter fog as it rose up from the cliffs. Don't pretend you didn't hear it, Oscar insisted. I know writers don't like to talk about what are they working on sometimes, but you can trust us. Give us a preview at least. Armando cleared his throat, looked at Berta as if to say, our friends are so annoying, and finally lit himself a cigarette and decided to reply. I'm writing a story about infidelity. As you can tell, it's not a very original subject. So much has been written about infidelity. Think back to The Red and the Black, Madame Bovary, Anna Karenina, to name just the masterpieces. But actually, I feel drawn to things that aren't original at all. The ordinary, the well-used. On that note, I've put my own spin on something like Claude Monet said. The subject matter for me is irrelevant. What matters are the relationships between me and the subject matter. Berta, why don't you close the window? The fog is getting in, please. As an introduction, that's not bad, Carlos said. Now let's get to what it is really about. I'm coming to that. It's about a man who suspects his wife is cheating on him. I should say, first of all, that in 20 years of marriage or more, this thought had never entered to his head. The man, let's call him Pedro or Juan, whatever you like it, had always trusted his wife's simplicity. And as he also was a liberal, modern man, he let her have what they call a life of her own, and never made her accountant of anything. The perfect husband, Irma said. Are you listening to me, Oscar? In a way, yes, Armando went on. The perfect husband. Anyway, as I was saying, Pedro, let's call him like that, starts to doubt his wife's infidelity. I won't go into details about where these doubts come from, but what we do know is when it happens, he feels like his whole world is crashing down around him. Not only because he was deeply in love with his wife, not with the passion of youth, of course, but perhaps in a more lasting way, with understanding, respect, tolerance, all those little kindnesses and concessions that come from having a routine and which form of basis of your married life together. I don't like routine, Carlos said. Routine is the denial of love. Possibly, Armando said. Although that just seems like something to say, but let me go on. As I was saying, Pedro suspects his wife is cheating on him, but because this is just a suspicion, all the more distressing for it's not defined, he decides to look for proof. And while he's looking for proof of this affair, he discovers a second affair, which is even more serious because it's been going on for longer and is more passionate. What proof was there? Carlos asked. When it comes to infidelity, proof is hard to come by. Let's say letters, or photos, or accounts from people he can completely trust, Armando said. But that's not the important thing at this point. What we know is that Pedro sinks even deeper into despair, because now he's dealing with no one but two lovers, the most recent one, who he suspects he knows, and the older one, of whom he thinks he has proof. But it doesn't stop there. As he continues to investigate the frequency, severity, and circumstances of this betrayal, he discovers the presence of a third lover. And when he tries to find out more about this third, he uncovers a fourth. A real Mesalin, you mean? Carlos cut in. How many did she have in the end? For the purposes of the story, I'll make do with 4. It's the right number. I could have made it more, but what would have given me some compositional problems. So Pedro's wife had 4 lovers, and all at the same time too, which shouldn't come as a surprise as all 4 of them were very different from each other. One kind a bit younger than her, another older, one very cultured and polite, another more ignorant, and so on and so on. Which meant that they could satisfy her in the different appetites of her body and her mind. And what does Pedro do? Amalia asked. I'm coming to that. You can imagine the terrible state of his anguish, rage, and jealousy he must be in this situation. Many pages of the story will be dedicated to the analysis and description of his state of mind, but I'll spare you that. I will just say that, thanks to his tremendous willpower, and above all his exacerbated sense of propriety, he doesn't let his feelings show on results alone, without confiding in anyone, to find the solution to his problem. That's what we want to know, Oscar said. What the hell does he do? To be honest, I don't know either. The story isn't finished yet. I think Pedro contemplates a series of alternatives, but I still don't know which one he's going to choose. Berta, can you pour me another coffee, please? In any case, he tells himself that when life presents us with an obstacle, we have to eliminate it, just to get it back to the original situation. But of course, there isn't one obstacle here, we have 4. If there were only the one lover, he wouldn't hesitate in killing him. A crime? Irma asked. Would Pedro be capable of that? A crime, yes, but a crime of passion. As you know, criminal laws all around the world contain provisions that mitigate the punishment in cases where there is a crime of passion, especially if a good lawyer shows that the perpetrator committed the crime in a violent state of passion. Let's say Pedro was prepared to run the risk of a murder, knowing that given the circumstances, the punishment wouldn't be too bad. As you see, killing one of the lovers wouldn't actually solve anything, as he would still be left with the other 3. And killing all 4 would be a very, very serious crime. A massacre, really, which would earn him capital punishment. So Pedro dismisses the idea of a crime. Of crimes, Irma corrected. Yeah, right, of crimes. But then he has a brilliant idea, to set the lovers against each other, so they eliminate themselves. He imagines the idea like this. Since there are 4 of them, and now you understand why that number worked for me, I'll have a kind of knockout, like in a sports tournament, setting 2 against 2, and then the 2 winners that weigh at least 3 of them will be eliminated. Now it sounds like a novel, Carlos said. What the hell does he do? In practice, I don't think this is gonna work. But we are in the world of literature. That is to say, the world of possibilities. Everything rests on the reader believing what I am telling them. And that's for me to worry about. So Pedro divides the lovers into 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. By anonymous letters or phone calls or some other means, he reveals to 1 the existence of 2, and to 3 the existence of 4, all using a gradual strategy and treacherous technique that let him provoke in his chosen killer not only the most terrible jealousy, but a passionate desire to annihilate his rival. I forgot to tell you that Rosa's lovers, let's make that the wife's name, were fiercely in love with her, thinking that only they were the keepers of her heart, and that's why the revelation that they have competition hits them just as hard as it hits Pedro. Yeah, that's possible, Carlos said. A lover must be more jealous of another lover than of the husband. To sum it up, Armando went on, Pedro carries the whole thing off, so well that lover number 1 kills 2 and 3 kills 4, so that leaves just 2. And with these two, he goes through the same process, so that lover 1 kills 3. And then the survivor of this bloodbath is killed by Pedro, which means he personally commits a single crime. And as it's just the one unmotivated passion, he gets a lenient sentence. At the same time, he achieves what he set out to do, which is remove the obstacles in the way of his love. I think it's ingenious, Oscar said, but I still say that in practice it just wouldn't work. Suppose lover 1 doesn't actually kill 2, he just injures him. Or lover 3, however much he loves Rosa, is incapable of committing a crime. You're right, Armando said, and that's why Pedro rejects this solution. Setting the lovers against one another so they take themselves out of the equation isn't viable, in reality or in literature. What does he do then? Berta asked. Well, I don't know. Myself, like I told you, the story is not finished. That's why I'm telling you this. Can you come up with anything? Yes, Berta said. Get divorced. Nothing simpler. Yeah, I thought of that. But what will divorce solve? It will be a pointless scandal. Because one way or another, a divorce is always scandalous. Even more so in a city like this, which in many ways is still quite provincial. Now, divorce will have the problem of the lovers, and Pedro suffering exactly how it was. It will leave it like that, and it wouldn't even satisfy his desire for revenge. Divorce wouldn't be the right solution. I was actually thinking of another one. Pedro throws Rosa out of the house after he's shown her the proof of her betrayal and giving her a piece of his mind. He brutally throws her out onto the street with all her belongings or without them. That will be a mainly and morally justified solution. I think so too, Oscar said. A real man solution. You cheated on me, it serves you right. Now you are on your own. Yeah, well, it's not that simple, Armando went on. I don't think Pedro will go for that solution either. Mainly because throwing his wife out will be almost unbearable, when what he really wants is to keep her. Throwing her out will make her even more dependent on her lovers, drive her into their arms and further away from him. Now, throwing her out of the house, although it's possible, doesn't solve anything. Pedro thinks the most sensible thing to do will be the opposite. What do you mean the opposite? Irma asked. Leave home. Disappear without a trace. Leaving just a letter or not leaving anything. You know, his wife will understand the reasons for his disappearance. Leave and head for a far off country to start a new life, a different life, a new job, new friends, even a new wife, and never have to account for anything. And even supposing Pedro and Rosa have children, although it would be better if they didn't, that would make the story too complicated. But Pedro will leave, abandoning everything, including his supposed children, because romantic passion comes before paternal passion. So Pedro leaves her. Then what? Berta asked. Pedro doesn't leave, Berta. No, he doesn't leave. Because leaving isn't the right solution either. What will he gain by leaving? Nothing. In fact, he'll lose everything. It would be a good solution if Rosa were financially dependent on Pedro, as she would at least have the reason to suffer his absence, but I've forgotten to tell you that she had a personal fortune. Rich parents, family wealth, whatever. That means she could get by perfectly well without him. Besides, Pedro's not a kid anymore, and it will be hard for him to start a new life in a new country. Obviously, him running away would only benefit his wife, who once she was rid of Pedro, will give more attention to her relationships with her lovers and could have as many as she liked. But the main reason is that while Pedro will successfully settle and prosper in a far-off city, and as they said, start his life over, he would always be tormented by the memory of his unfaithful wife and by the pleasure she was still deriving from his deal with her lovers. Yeah, that's true, Amalia said. Disappearing is just crazy. But this option of running away has a variation, Armando piped up. A variation I quite like. Let's say Pedro doesn't disappear without a trace, but simply moves into another house after a calm explanation to his wife and an amicable separation. What could happen then? I think something is possible, at least in this theory, but that requires some expansion. If I may, I think lovers are rarely better than husbands, not intellectually or morally, or as human beings, not even in bed. What happens is that the relationship between a husband and wife gets contaminated, corrupted, and devaluated by day life. It's disrupted by hundreds of problems that come from living together and cause constant disagreements, from how to raise children, if there are any, to unpaid bills, what furniture needs to be replaced, what to have for dinner, who you need to visit or invite over. Oscar chipped in. Exactly, this kind of problems don't exist in the relationship between wife and lover, because the relationship operates exclusively on a sexual level. The wife and lover only meet to make love, leaving all their other concerns aside. The husband and wife, on the other hand, take home and constantly face the burden of their life together, which makes it possible or difficult to be romantic. This is why I'm saying that if the husband leaves home, the barriers that get imposed between him and his wife will disappear, which will leave the way free for a pleasant relationship. In short, what I mean is that an amicable separation will have the advantage of Pedro of lumbering the lovers with the day-to-day problems and all the trouble and destruction they cause for romantic passion. Pedro, in distancing himself from his wife, will actually get closer to her, as the lovers will end up taking on the role of the husband and he that of the lover. Living in closer proximity to her lovers thanks to Pedro leaving and only seeing him occasionally. The situation will be reversed, and from then on the lovers will get the thorns and the husband the roses, or in Pedro's case, the rosa. That all seems very eloquent and well set out, Oscar interrupted. Reversing the roles with a strategic withdrawal? Not bad. What do you all think? If you ask me, I think it's the best solution. But it's not. No, it is not, Armando said. And believe me, I'm sad that it's not. An author, however cold and objective he might want to be, always has his preferences. Oh, it would be wonderful if things could work like that, preserving his status as husband and being her lover at the same time. But this solution has at least one flaw. The main one, in any case, is that Rosa is probably already sick of Pedro and can't stand to have him near or far, as her husband or her lover. Anything related to him is tainted by the life they shared, which means that even though they are not living together, she will only need to look at him for the ghost of their domestic experience to be resurrected on her mind. The husband carries with him the burden of their past marriage, which will always prevent him from approaching his wife as a stranger. All in all, Carlos said, it looks like Pedro's running out of options. No, there are still other options. Just to do nothing, accept the situation and carry on with his life, and with Rosa as though nothing had happened. This solution seems intelligent and elegant, right? It will show understanding, realism, a sense of cohabitation, and even a certain nobility, a certain wisdom. I mean, Pedro will accept that he had a pair or rather 4 pairs of magnificent horns, and resigned himself to the fact that was now part of the corporation of cuckolds, which, as all we know, has no membership limit. I don't agree with that, Carlos said. Of course, it will show a broadness of mind, absence of prejudges, as you said. But I think it will be rather undignified, humiliating. At least I wouldn't stand for it. Me neither, Oscar said. So you listen, Amalia. When we get home, let this be a lesson for you. Oh, our husbands, Amalia said. What a bunch of chauvinist pigs. But this alternative has its advantages, Armando insisted. The main one is that by accepting his situation, Pedro will keep his wife by his side. A wife who's cheating on him, of course, and who physically and spiritually belongs to other men, but who is there, at the end of the day, within reach, and who might offer him the occasional random gesture of affection. He wouldn't get to keep her body or her soul, but he would keep her presence. And I think that seems like a marvelous proof of love, on his part at least. Proof we should all take our hats off to. A hat which Pedro will never get on his well-decorated head, Oscar said. Now, clearly I don't think it's a good idea to accept the situation. Going along with it, in this case, makes him less of a man, less of a husband. Possibly. Yeah, Armando said. But I still think it's a considerate solution that will require a certain magnanimity. Perhaps it's better to be unhappy beside the woman you love than happy away from her. But still, let's say this isn't a good option either. So he can kill the lovers, Carlos said. He can throw his wife out of the house. And he can disappear, or divorce, or get used to the situation. So what's left for him? I must say your character's got himself in quite a mess. There's still another way, Armando said. A clean, straightforward way. Suicide. Irma, Amalia, and Berta protested in unison. Oh no, Irma said. No suicides. Poor Pedro. To be honest, I think he seems like a nice man. What about you, Berta? You have influence over Armando. Persuade him not to kill him, please. I don't think he'll kill him, Berta said. The story will turn into a vulgar melodrama. And anyway, Pedro's too clever to commit suicide. I don't know whether he's clever or not, Oscar said. After all, that's your assumption. But this situation is so messed up that he'll be better off shooting himself. Don't you think, Armando? Shooting himself, Armando repeated. Yeah, shooting himself. But what would that solve? Nothing. No, I don't think suicide is the right way to go. And not because it's a melodramatic ending, as Berto says. I love melodrama. I think our lives are made up of a series of melodramas. The thing is that this solution will be just as bad as disappearing without a trace, with the aggravating factor that it will be a disappearance with no chance of coming back. If Pedro leaves home, he still has some hope of return and even a reconciliation. But if he commits suicide... Yeah, that's true, Carlos said. I'd always rather have a return ticket in my pocket, although it's not a ridiculous solution. If Pedro commits suicide, he erases himself from the world. He also erases Rosa and her lovers, and that means he erases his problem, which at the end is one way of resolving it. You're not wrong, Armando said. and I'm going to reconsider that hypothesis. Although there's a big difference between resolving a problem and avoiding it. And anyway, who knows, maybe Pedro's pain is so bad that it will follow him beyond the grave. Your character is in a real trouble, Oscar yawned. I can see you haven't found a solution to your story. But our story is that it's after midnight and we have to work tomorrow. And we do have the solution. Leaving without any further ado. Wait, Armando said. I'd forgotten another option. There's another one? Berta asked. And one of the most important. Actually, I should really have mentioned it at the start. It's also possible that Pedro could come to the conclusion that Rosa isn't being unfaithful to him. That all the evidence he's gathering is false. As you all know, in matters like this, the only proof is finding them. All the rest of it, like letters, pictures, or accounts, can be discounted. Or you can discuss it, right? As a couple. Maybe he misinterpreted it. Maybe there are fake or inauthentic documents or malicious witnesses. Anyhow, circumstances that led them themselves to an unfounded accusation. And the truth is, Pedro hasn't got all the evidence. That's it, Oscar said. You should have started there. You've got us going around in circles over a problem that didn't really exist. Shall we be going, Irma? Wouldn't you like a cognac or a mint? Berta asked. Thank you, Carlos said. Armando's story has kept us entertained, but Oscar's right. It's getting late. Anyway, Armando, I really hope next time we meet you'll have finished your story and you can read it to us. Oh, Armando said, the most interesting stories are generally the ones we can't find an ending for. But this time I'll do what I can for finish it. And with the right solution, definitely. Will you fetch us our things, Berta? Amalia said. I'll fetch them, Armando said. You and Berta make arrangements for the next meeting. Armando went inside while Berta and the two couples said their goodbyes. Where will the next dinner be? At Carlos' place? In a fortnight? In a month? An urgent bang came from the back of the house, and they stood, paralyzed. You say that was a gunshot, Oscar said. Berta was the first to run down the corridor, just as Armando reappeared carrying a bag, a scarf, and a coat. He was pale. Strange, he said. That kind of coincidence could be quite disconcerting. While I was looking for a tablet on my beside table, I moved my revolver, and I don't know how, but a shot went off. It went through the table runner and ricocheted off the wall. You gave us a quiet fright, Oscar said. That's how accidents happen. That's why I never carry weapons. Come on, be more careful the next time. Yeah, I'm sorry, there's no need to exaggerate. After all, nothing happened. I'll see you out. The seafront was still shrouded in mist. Armando hoped the cars would start, slid in the latch on his way into the house, and went back to the living room. Berta was taking the dirtiest trash to the kitchen. The girl will tidy up in here in the morning. I'm really tired now. Yeah, it's okay. On the other hand, I'm not all sleepy. Their conversation gave me some ideas. I'm going to work on my story for a while. By the way, you haven't told me what you made of it. Please, Armando. I told you, I'm really tired. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Berta went to the bed, and Armando headed off to his study. He spent a long time revising his manuscript, crossing words out, adding words in, making corrections. Eventually, he switched off the light and went into the bedroom. Berta was asleep on her side, her beside lamp still on. Armando looked at her blonde hair spread out across the pillow, her profile, her delicate neck, the way her body moved as she breathed under the eider down. Opening the drawer in his bedside table, he took out his revolver and stretching out his arm, shot her in the back of the head. Thanks for your time and attention. I hope you enjoy this experience. Remember, you can support this project through PayPal or BIZUM. Don't forget to like it, and if you wish, share it. See you on the next meeting.